Let's talk about something that keeps so many people stuck in the wrong relationships. That feeling of intensity. You know what I'm talking about. The kind of relationship where you're constantly wondering where you stand, questioning what they feel, waiting for that next message that might take hours or even days to come. And then suddenly, they show up. A message out of nowhere, a spontaneous date night, a passionate kiss, and for a moment, it all feels right, like the chaos was worth it, like this must be what love feels like, because, well, it's just so intense. But here's the trap. That emotional roller coaster you're on, it feels like passion. It feels like chemistry. It feels like something deep is happening. And that's why it's so addictive. Because those moments of closeness, they don't just feel good, they feel like relief. Relief after the anxiety, the confusion, the distance. And that relief feels so powerful that you convince yourself this must mean something. We must have a connection. What you don't realize is that your nervous system is basically running a marathon. You're in this constant state of tension followed by a sudden release. It's exactly the same mechanism that happens in addiction. Intermittent reinforcement, where you sometimes get what you want, but not always, is one of the most powerful forms of conditioning. It keeps you chasing, hoping, trying harder every time. Now let's break this down. Think about it. When someone gives you their time, attention, affection consistently, when you don't have to wonder if they like you or worry if they'll text back, do you ever find yourself thinking, yeah, but something's missing? That something you're talking about is usually drama. It's the absence of the high-stakes guessing game you've become so used to that stability feels boring. And that's a dangerous place to be because it means your compass for what love should feel like is totally skewed. We've been sold this idea that if something doesn't feel complicated, it must not be real. That if your heart isn't constantly racing, your stomach full of knots and your head spinning, then maybe the relationship isn't exciting enough. But that's not love. That's anxiety. That's fear of abandonment. That's emotional volatility disguised as romance. What I've seen over and over is this pattern. Someone meets a person who's consistent, respectful, shows up, communicates, and they say, he's nice, but I don't feel that spark. And you want to say, are you sure that spark isn't just the absence of being emotionally destabilized? Because there's a big difference between genuine connection and trauma bonding. The real question isn't, do I feel butterflies? Because sometimes those butterflies are your body warning you that you're entering a familiar pain loop. The real question is, do I feel safe? Do I feel respected? Do I feel like I can relax into this connection instead of always bracing for the other shoe to drop? See, what toxic people often do is create a dynamic where they control the rhythm of the relationship. When they pull away, you feel abandoned. When they come back, you feel chosen. And that creates an illusion that their return must mean they care. It becomes addictive because it taps into something primal in us, the need to feel wanted, to feel seen. So every time they give you even a crumb of affection after pulling away, it feels like a feast. But that's not love. That's starvation. That's your heart being trained to feel full on scraps. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the harder it becomes to recognize the damage it's doing to your self-esteem. Because you start to believe that love is something you have to earn rather than something that should be offered freely. That you have to be better, sexier, more available, less emotional, more agreeable, just to hold someone's attention. Let me be clear about something. Real connection doesn't make you feel unstable. It doesn't make you question your worth. It doesn't rely on you constantly proving yourself. It gives you space to be, not pressure to perform. So if you find yourself chasing someone who's constantly hot and cold, constantly confusing, constantly pulling you in just to push you away again, stop and ask yourself, is it really them you're addicted to? Or is it the feeling of finally being seen by someone who's been ignoring you? Because that's a powerful drug. The illusion that this person finally choosing you means you must be enough. But true connection doesn't require chaos to feel real. And love should never feel like a battle you have to keep winning. So here's the thing. So many women find themselves drawn to toxic men, not because they don't know he's bad for them, but because deep down, they feel this strange pull, like there's something noble about staying. They feel a sense of purpose in trying to change him, to help him, to be the one person who sees his pain and sticks around. That's not weakness, it's empathy. But empathy without boundaries, that's how people get hurt. Maybe he doesn't communicate clearly, or he says things like, I don't really do relationships, but there's something in his vulnerability, some sadness in his eyes, or a story from his past that makes you think he just needs someone to show him what real love feels like. And that someone, you tell yourself you can be different, that you won't run away like everyone else did, that if you just love him the right way, if you're patient enough, supportive enough, understanding enough, he'll finally become the man you know he can be. Not the man he is now, but the version of him you see buried deep down inside. The potential. And it's that potential that keeps you stuck. Here's the problem. You're falling for who he could be, not who he is. And potential is a very expensive thing to invest in when you're the only one doing the work. Toxic men are often masters at giving you just enough to keep your hopes alive. Maybe he opens up to you about his painful childhood or his last heartbreak. And in that moment, it feels like a breakthrough. You think, wow, he does have a sensitive side. He just needs time. He just needs me. But what happens next? He pulls away again. He shuts down. He goes back to being inconsistent, distant, maybe even cold. And now you're chasing that emotional breadcrumb trail, desperate to get back to that one moment where you felt something real. This is where it gets dangerous, because that dynamic, those tiny glimpses of intimacy, followed by long stretches of confusion, start to condition you. You become emotionally invested in the possibility of who he might be, and that makes you ignore the reality of how he treats you today. And let's be honest, it's not all on him. There's a part of you that likes feeling needed. There's a part of you that feels worthy when you can soothe someone's pain, when you're the one who understands him better than anyone else. That role, that identity becomes addictive. You become the rescuer. And even when it hurts, it feels meaningful. But love is not about saving someone. Real love is about meeting someone where they are, not dragging them to where you wish they'd be. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: just because someone is broken doesn't mean it's your job to fix them. You are not his therapist. You are not his emotional rehabilitation center. You are not a reward he has to earn after a lifetime of self-sabotage. And your value is not measured by how much pain you're willing to endure for someone else's growth. I know it can feel cruel to walk away from someone who's struggling. You don't want to be just another person who gives up on him. But here's the thing. Love doesn't mean sacrificing your well-being to prove your loyalty. And someone who truly wants to change will do it with or without your constant encouragement. Change that's real, lasting change comes from internal motivation, not external pressure. If he only evolves when you threaten to leave, it's not transformation, it's survival mode. And if you're constantly in this cycle of waiting, hoping, proving, explaining, and justifying, you're not in love. You're in emotional quicksand. Sometimes we romanticize struggle. We think love is supposed to be hard. We think that if we fight hard enough, if we suffer through it, that makes it more valuable. But the truth is, healthy love might not be as dramatic, but it's stable. It feels safe. It makes you feel more like yourself, not less. And if you have to lose pieces of yourself to keep someone else together, that's not a relationship. That's a rescue mission. And let's talk about what it really costs to stay in those situations. Because it's not just time you're giving up, it's self-worth. Every time you accept mistreatment because of potential, you teach yourself that love means tolerating pain. Every time you excuse bad behavior because of a sad backstory, you silence your own needs. Every time you prioritize his healing over your peace, you dim your own light. You're not supposed to be a supporting character in someone else's redemption arc. You're not here to be the emotional sponge that absorbs all his chaos. You're meant to be a partner, not a project manager. I know you care deeply. I know you have a big heart, and that's beautiful. But don't let your compassion become a cage. Don't let your kindness blind you to what you deserve. You deserve someone who shows up, not someone you have to chase. You deserve consistency, not confusion. You deserve love that feels like freedom, not a test you have to keep passing just to be seen. Because the truth is, love isn't supposed to drain you, it's supposed to grow you. And just because you can help someone doesn't mean you should, especially when helping them means hurting you. Let them fix themselves. You go build a life where you're not the solution to someone's problems. You're the reward for someone who already did the work. You ever notice how the more unavailable someone is, the more we seem to want them? It's strange, right? We can have someone kind, consistent, and genuinely invested in us standing right in front of us. And yet, we find ourselves thinking about the guy who barely texts back, who disappears for days, who gives us mixed signals and leaves us feeling like we're constantly off balance. Why is it that validation from someone who's emotionally unavailable feels more valuable? It's because at a deeper level, we associate someone being hard to get with them being high value. It's a bit of a mind trick. If someone isn't giving us their time or energy freely, we assume they must be special, that their approval must mean something. So when they finally give us a crumb of attention, we feel like we've earned it. And anything earned feels more rewarding than something freely given, right? That's the trap. When someone is inconsistent, when they pull away and then lean in, when they ignore us and then suddenly act like we're the most important person in the world, it creates a chemical response in the brain. That unpredictability spikes our dopamine levels. It's literally the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. You don't know when the reward is coming, and so you stay hooked, hoping the next pull gives you that emotional jackpot. That's not love. That's behavioral conditioning. That's being trained to crave approval. But here's the problem. When we get caught in that cycle, we start basing our self-worth on how much attention we can squeeze out of someone who doesn't show up for us consistently. We forget that real love isn't about winning someone over. It's about being met. It's about someone seeing you clearly, choosing you, and then actually showing up like they mean it. Yet we chase these men who are hot and cold because when they're warm for a moment, it feels euphoric. It feels like, yes, I did it. I finally cracked him. He finally sees me. But that feeling doesn't last, does it? Because the next day, he's cold again, distant, confusing, and now you're back to square one, wondering what you did wrong or what changed. That constant state of uncertainty keeps you emotionally dependent. You're no longer looking for love, you're looking for validation. And here's the really dangerous part. When we finally get that brief hit of attention or affection, we confuse it with emotional intimacy. We mistake that small, fleeting moment of connection as proof that the relationship is real, that the guy cares, that there's something deeper going on. But there's not. What we're experiencing isn't intimacy, it's emotional relief. The relief of being seen for a second by someone who usually makes us feel invisible. That's why women get addicted to toxic men. Not because they don't know better, not because they're weak, but because their brain has associated that man's approval with their value. And every time he withholds it, it makes you want it more. You work harder. You overthink your texts. You analyze every conversation. You blame yourself when he pulls away and reward yourself when he leans in. You become invested in the chase, not the person. It's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking, if I can just be more understanding, more patient, more fun, more attractive, more whatever, then he'll choose me. But let me tell you something really simple and powerful. If someone's affection feels like a reward for performing well, you're not in a relationship. You're in an audition. And you don't need to audition for love. Love doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't dangle affection in front of you like a prize. Real love, healthy, lasting love, is steady. It's secure. It's not a roller coaster. It's not built on games. It's built on clarity and consistency. Someone who values you doesn't make you guess. They don't make you earn their attention like it's some kind of competition. They show up because they want to, not because you've danced for it. Now, here's where it gets real. A lot of people hear this and say, well, the good guys are boring, but that's not true. You've just trained your nervous system to associate emotional chaos with love. Peace feels foreign, stability feels dull. But what you call boring might actually be someone treating you the way you deserve to be treated. And it only feels flat because you're still detoxing from the emotional spikes that a toxic man gave you. It's like coming off sugar. At first, real food tastes bland. But over time, your palate resets. You start craving what's actually good for you. The same is true in love. The moment you stop seeking validation from someone who's inconsistent is the moment you start reclaiming your power. Because now you're no longer chasing someone else's approval. You're building a life where your value isn't up for debate. And I get it. Walking away from someone who occasionally gives you just enough love to keep you holding on, it's hard. You keep thinking, but what if I leave and he finally becomes the man I know he could be? Let me tell you something. That version of him only exists in your imagination. You've fallen in love with his potential, not his pattern. And people don't fall in love with who we could be. They fall in love with how we show up consistently. So don't waste your time hoping someone will finally see your worth. Go where your worth is already seen. Because when you stop trying to earn love from someone who weaponizes their attention, that's when you open the door to the kind of love that actually changes your life. The kind that feels calm, clear, and real. You don't need to convince the wrong person to choose you. You just need to stop choosing them. You know what's wild? Sometimes the things we chase in relationships have nothing to do with love and everything to do with familiarity. This is the part most people never realize until they've repeated the same painful cycle over and over again. We don't just get attached to people who love us. We get attached to people who feel familiar. And that's not always a good thing. Think about it like this. If you grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, where attention was something you had to earn, or where affection was always mixed with tension, then chaos starts to feel normal. You start to associate unpredictability with love. You expect to feel a little off balance, a little unsure. That becomes your baseline. And when someone comes along and gives you a similar dynamic, your nervous system recognizes it. It says, this feels like home. But just because something feels like home doesn't mean it's healthy. Just because you're used to walking on eggshells doesn't mean you should stay in a house where you're never sure if the floor will hold. The truth is, many people fall into patterns not because they're weak, but because they're wired to seek what they already know. And toxic men who withhold, who criticize, who pull you in and push you away, can end up scratching a wound that never really healed. Here's the tricky part. When something's familiar, it feels safe, even when it's not. So when a guy treats you poorly, your mind doesn't always register it as abuse or manipulation. It registers it as normal. That's why women stay in relationships that hurt them. That's why they keep giving chances to the same kind of man, even if he has a different name and face. They're not addicted to the pain, they're addicted to the pattern. And patterns are powerful, because once you fall into one, it takes real awareness and courage to step out of it. It means asking questions you might not want to ask, like, where have I felt this before? Who made me feel like I had to prove my worth for love? Why do I feel more chemistry with the guy who treats me like an option than the one who treats me with consistency? The answers are rarely comfortable, but they're freeing. Because when you start recognizing that this thing you keep calling love is actually just emotional repetition, that's when everything shifts. That's when you stop mistaking anxiety for attraction. That's when you realize that someone who keeps you guessing doesn't deserve a permanent seat in your life. And I know that sometimes it's easy to romanticize the pain. It's easy to say, but he's been through a lot. Or, I see the good in him. But seeing the good in someone isn't the same as being treated well. Having empathy for someone's struggle doesn't mean you should sacrifice your self-worth on the altar of their potential. If someone can't show up for you now with presence and respect and emotional maturity, then you have to stop hoping that one day they'll wake up and become the person you deserve. Love isn't supposed to feel like you're constantly being tested. It's not supposed to feel like an audition. And yet, that's exactly how toxic relationships make you feel. Like you're always one step away from being enough. Like you have to earn every ounce of affection. Like if you just do more, be more, fix more, maybe then you'll be chosen. That's not love. That's emotional survival. And you weren't born to survive love, you were born to thrive in it. You don't have to keep rewriting the same story. You don't have to keep playing the role of the woman who gives her heart to men who don't know how to hold it. You don't have to keep choosing what's familiar over what's healthy. But first you have to be honest with yourself. You have to ask, is this love or is this just what I've always known? Because the moment you stop calling chaos passion, the moment you stop calling mixed signals mystery, the moment you stop calling heartbreak growth, you create space for something entirely different. You create space for a man who doesn't make you question your worth. You create space for peace. And the beautiful thing about peace is once you experience it, you realize just how loud and draining toxicity really was. So, if you're still holding on to someone who keeps you guessing, if you're still trying to fix someone who doesn't even think he's broken, if you're still addicted to the pain because it feels like love, it's time to take a breath, step back, and remind yourself this isn't home, it's just familiar. You deserve more than familiar. You deserve safe. You deserve seen. You deserve love that feels like freedom, not a fight. You know, one of the most powerful tools toxic men use, and why so many women find themselves addicted to them without even realizing it, is what I call breadcrumbing. It's subtle, it's sneaky, and it's incredibly effective at creating emotional attachment, even when there's very little substance to the relationship itself. Here's how it works. A toxic guy doesn't usually show up all in. He doesn't consistently make you feel special, secure, or prioritized, but he gives you just enough to keep you guessing. He'll send that one thoughtful text when you've almost given up. He'll show up with charm and effort just when you're starting to pull away. He throws out these little crumbs of affection, of attention, and those crumbs, they become addictive. Why? Because your mind starts living in anticipation. You're constantly wondering, when will he show up again? What did that message mean? Was he being sweet, or is he just bored tonight? You become hooked on the possibility of connection instead of the reality of the relationship. You're chasing a high that only ever comes in small doses. And you start equating those rare moments of attention with love. Think about it like this. Imagine someone gives you a delicious meal every day. You know it's coming. You don't have to stress, wonder, or worry about it. You enjoy it and you move on. But now imagine someone only feeds you randomly. Sometimes a bite here, a bite there, and you never know when it's coming. Suddenly, every bite becomes a big deal. You start obsessing over when the next one will come. You're starving. And because you're starving, even scraps start to feel like a feast. And that's what breadcrumbing does. It creates emotional scarcity. And when you're in emotional scarcity, you lose your sense of perspective. You start to believe that what you're getting is the best you can get because you're operating from a place of lack. And here's the really tricky part. Breadcrumbing doesn't just keep you around. It starts to make you invest more. Because the less they give, the more you try to earn what little they offer. So now, instead of asking yourself, do I actually feel loved, seen, respected here? You're asking, what can I do to make him call more? Should I have responded differently? Was I too much? You turn the focus inward and not in a healthy way. You start blaming yourself for his inconsistency. And that's the moment the power dynamic flips. You're no longer evaluating whether he's right for you. You're trying to prove you're good enough for him. But let's pause for a second, because I want to say something that might be hard to hear. If someone is only showing up sporadically, it's not because they're confused. It's not because they have a lot going on. It's because they're only willing to invest at a level that's convenient for them, not the level you deserve. And we have to stop romanticizing those breadcrumbs. That one compliment he gave you last week, the night he opened up for 5 minutes about his past, the fact that he remembered your favorite coffee order. That's not enough. Those things don't equal a real relationship. A real relationship is consistent. It's mutual. It's a pattern of showing up, not a pattern of disappearing and then returning with just enough charm to reset the cycle. Here's what breadcrumbing really does. It hijacks your brain's reward system. It creates what's called intermittent reinforcement, a term from behavioral psychology that describes the most powerful way to condition someone. It's the same concept used in slot machines. You pull the lever and sometimes you get a reward. That randomness keeps you addicted because you never know when the next win is coming, and it keeps you chasing. So, when he's warm one day, cold the next, when he ghosts you and then drops back in with a, hey, miss you, when he says just enough to keep your hope alive, you're playing that emotional slot machine. And the worst part, you know it's not working for you. You feel the anxiety, the disappointment, the exhaustion, but every now and then, when he drops another crumb, it feels like a win. It reactivates the cycle. And this is why walking away can feel so hard. You're not just walking away from a person, you're walking away from the hope of what those crumbs represented. You're walking away from the fantasy version of him that lives in your mind, the one you imagined during those rare good moments. But here's the truth. The real him is the one who consistently fails to show up. The rest is just wishful thinking. You deserve more than that. You deserve a love that's not based on waiting, guessing, or hoping. You deserve someone who doesn't make you chase clarity. Someone who shows up consistently, not because they're trying to win you over, but because they value you, because they see you, because they're ready. And if a man can't give you that, no matter how charming or exciting he may be in those rare moments, he's not your person. He's just another distraction delaying you from the one who will actually show up with the love you've been working for. You're not hard to love, you're just asking the wrong person to do it. This is the part where I have to get brutally honest. Not to make you feel bad, but to give you your power back. Because at the core of why we keep entertaining toxic people, why we stay in situations that clearly aren't good for us, why we excuse bad behavior and hang on to hope like it's a lifeline, is something deeper than just liking the wrong person. It's about what we believe we're worthy of. Let me say that again. You don't attract what you deserve. You attract what you believe you deserve. If somewhere deep inside you've told yourself that love has to be hard, that affection must be earned, or that being chosen means constantly auditioning for someone's attention, then guess what? You will keep finding people who confirm that story. And that story becomes your standard. See, toxic men don't look toxic at first. They come in charming, they listen. At first, they compliment you. At first, they show just enough consistency to hook you, but not enough to build anything real. And if you already have a shaky relationship with your own worth, their inconsistency doesn't alarm you, it excites you. Because somewhere in your subconscious, it feels familiar. And not only that, but you start believing that you can be the one to change him. That if you're beautiful enough, kind enough, chill enough, patient enough, sexy enough, then he'll finally choose you. He'll wake up one day and realize you're everything he's ever wanted. But you're not falling in love with the man, you're falling in love with the potential of the man. And worse, you're attaching your worth to whether or not that potential gets realized. That's the trap. That's why it's not just about spotting the red flags, it's about doing the deeper work to understand why red flags don't repel you in the first place, why they feel like a challenge instead of a warning, and most importantly, why being loved by someone who doesn't treat you well still feels like a prize. Now let's flip the script for a second. Let's say you knew your worth, not in some vague self-help meme kind of way, but in a real, embodied, non-negotiable kind of way. Imagine you show up to a date, not wondering whether you're good enough for him, but asking, is this man aligned with the life I want, with the peace I've built, with the joy I'm not willing to compromise anymore? That's a whole different energy. Because when you know your worth, you don't tolerate confusion. You don't romanticize mixed signals. You don't stay just because he has a good heart deep down, if he can't show up in a healthy way on the surface. You don't settle for a text at midnight when you deserve plans made in the daylight. You don't chase someone who walks away and breadcrumb you back in every time you try to let go. You stop trying to earn someone's love and start expecting it to show up fully or not at all. And I know it's not easy. It's scary because the moment you raise your standard, some people will leave. The moment you say, no, I don't accept this kind of treatment anymore, a few connections will fall apart. That's true. But here's what's also true. When you stop accepting less, you make space for more. When you draw the line, you're not just saying no to a man, you're saying yes to yourself. The women I've seen truly shift out of the cycle of toxic relationships are the ones who got radically clear about what they wanted and stopped making exceptions for people who couldn't meet them there. They didn't wait for someone to treat them better to feel better. They worked on feeling better first. And that created a new filter. Suddenly, that guy who doesn't call for 3 days, not sexy anymore. That man who plays games and keeps you guessing, exhausting, not intriguing. That situationship where you're investing everything and getting crumbs, not even tempting. Why? Because your standard has changed. And when your standard changes, your patterns change. But here's the kicker. That shift starts with you. Not them, not the next person, not the apology you're hoping to get. It starts with the quiet, honest moment where you say, I've been choosing pain over peace, fantasy over reality, potential over partnership, and I'm done. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real with yourself. Where have you settled? Where have you stayed too long? Where have you made excuses? And more importantly, what would it look like to stop? Because the truth is, healing from toxic love isn't about learning how to get them to love you right. It's about realizing you deserve to be loved right in the first place and not settling until you are. Every time you hold the line for your standard, you're teaching the world how to treat you. Every time you walk away from chaos, you're walking closer to peace. And every time you choose your worth over your wounds, you become the kind of person who doesn't chase love, you attract it. So the next time someone makes you question your value, remind yourself of this. Love that makes you feel small isn't love at all.